From Kingston to Kinshasa, via Cape Town, Algiers, and sites of struggle all over the world, music is interwoven with liberation struggles. Today's movement against the genocide in Gaza is no different. So what is the soundtrack to the Palestine movement, and what can it tell us about the values and ideals guiding it? I'm Myriam, Francois, and this is The Stream.
If I was in Palestine right now, if I was in Gaza right now, if I was in Rahaf right now, what would I want the rest of the world to be doing? I would want them to say, "Free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
يا أهلي أنا بديهم أنا دمي فلسطيني 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 أنا دمي
Saint Levant, Mohammed Asaf, Macklemore. These are just some of the names of the artists who have used their music to raise awareness of the Palestinian struggle. So what is the role of music in a liberation movement, and what can it achieve that words alone cannot? To introduce us to this topic, let's listen to Rahaf from Soul Band, a Palestinian group from Gaza.
قلبي وجعني كثير صعب كثير
لو مرة بس يرتاح لي بأرضك خفا لو مرة بس ترتاحي من بطش
أنا رهف مطربة فلسطينية من غزة أغني من عمر صغير بشوف المسرح مكاني والأغنية قصتي. Unfortunately, the war came and everything is gone. أنا بصوتي وصلت لصوت قصف عشان أنا فلسطينية من غزة. طلعت من بيتي وتركت كل إشي ورايا. The war affected everything in my life, not just my dreams, and actually everything was destroyed, and I don't know if I can dream again, but all I know that I will try hard not to lose my hope. In this situation, we need to listen our Palestinian music and Palestinian songs like أرض المجد وأرض العزة بلدي الغالية الحلوة غزة, which give us energy and hope and support our children psychologically. So I think music always important. I hope it goes back to how it was. Gaza, the most beautiful city in the world.
Thanks, Rahaf. The importance of music as a source of hope in dark times. To discuss this with us today, we have poet, rapper, musician and activist Saul Williams, Arab-American singer Leila Hegazy, and Lebanese-Palestinian singer, rapper and musician Anis. Anis, you've recently finished touring in the US. Let's take a listen.
And while my people suffer under one of the most inhumane, one of the most unethical, one of the most calloused and gross human rights violations of modern history, as a Palestinian, it's a very weird feeling to be singing and having songs of joy and happiness. But as I said earlier in the show, music is a tool of liberation, and my music will always be used as a tool to liberate my people and to liberate all people and to liberate us here and to liberate myself from inside. So I just want you to know, as I play this show tonight, I am with the people of Gaza. I am with the people of Palestine. I am with the people of the West Bank.
Anis, what's it been like for you as a Palestinian musician performing in the US right now? And can you tell us about this idea of music also freeing you?
Yeah, absolutely. Touring right now is very sorrowful and at the same time purposeful. I think people collectively join together and band together through music. It's like a spiritual connection that we share. So to be in the same room with people in a time like this and to be able to speak on the things that are touching all of our hearts has a deep purpose. But it doesn't come without sorrow, because we know that all the while there is this juxtaposition of the intense suffering happening in Gaza. And so I'm trying my best to use the purpose of music in its live form to keep the eyes on our people and also to lift our people's spirits.
Saul, in 2003, you made a pledge which was heard the world over, titled Not in Our Name.
We believe it is our responsibility to resist the injustices done by our government in our name. Not in our name will you rage endless war.
How does it feel watching that back now in 2024, 20 years on, with all that is happening now?
Well, I will definitely say that that is certainly the kind of intention that was put into constructing that pledge of resistance. You know, we are Americans, for example, are forced to recite the Pledge of Allegiance every day before school, and I remember refusing to do it as a kid and then giving my kids permission to refuse it. And when writing the Pledge of Resistance, sitting with the writer Starhawk, I really felt as if we had to place the type of intention for something that would inspire and last. And so it's sad to see its relevance, you know, still there. But at the same time, that was exactly the energy that was put into it, you know, and so it's I'm glad that it's useful. That's the main thing, I think, as an artist, is you want your work to be useful. And for people and movements to find it useful up to this day is excellent. Yeah.
Yeah. Leila, you've gone viral for turning pop tracks into songs of resistance.
You see all those walls they build, we're gonna bring them tumbling down. We ain't gonna give up the fight. Our liberation's bound. They don't let journalists in.
Why did you opt for this particular means of getting your message out there? Why pop tracks?
So I think that I was really trying to connect with people who might not normally be connected to this issue. And I think when you sing songs that they know and you change the words around, you know, maybe at first they don't necessarily realize that they're hearing a remixed version of it, but it kind of makes people listen and maybe connect with the message a little bit more. So that was why I started doing that, really just to bring attention to the issue through kind of a different method than is usually used.
Well, on the ground in Palestine, music organizations have been focused on preserving and continuing a rich musical legacy, which includes sounds many of us will now be familiar with.
A song is eternal. A tune is eternal. It's an act of generosity, and it is a statement that I do exist. It is a space for dreams, for hopes, and it is a tool for expression and also documentation. We know music has played a major role in revolutions all around the world, including in Palestine. We know songs that date back not even to 1948 only, but before that, to the British Mandate that our grandmothers and great-grandmothers have sung, and we still know them until today. It is a statement that Palestine has existed ever since, for the longest time, contradictory to the Israeli narrative that tries constantly to erase the culture and the history of Palestine. A tune moves people. It's an act of empowerment. It's an act of motivation. It's an act of activism. That's why we believe in the power of music as a strong, empowering, and universal language for change.
Anis, as a Palestinian artist, do you feel this responsibility to carry forward this musical tradition, especially with so much erasure around?
Yes, absolutely. I think inevitably Palestinian spirit and culture sort of permeates everything we do. So for me, whether it's in the kindness or in the love I'm trying to write about, or the grief or the sorrow I'm trying to write about, inextricably, these things are just extensions of my Palestinian spirit passed down from my mother and her mother and those who came before me. So I've come to really embrace the role that our ancestors play in everything we create. And my Palestinian culture and spirit is handed down to me and through me by my ancestors. So it's an honor, and it's also, it carries a heavy weight, but a beautiful one.
Saul, I want to ask you about what some might consider a culture of silence in the music industry right now. There are some notable figures, including Palestinian ones, not to mention DJ Khaled, of course. What is the role of the musician, the artist right now at this current juncture as you see it?
Well, as I see it, I see music as a form of, art itself as a form of resistance, but I also see art and artists used as tools of propaganda. And you know, what that does is oftentimes it misaligns our values so that we become complicit with the system that we could be using our art to fight against, you know, and that's the problem. You have a lot of artists who yearn to be successful rather than yearning to be revolutionary through their art. And so there's a confusion of values in terms of what really makes something last. And you see people in T-shirts with Bob Marley, with Nina Simone, with Fela Kuti, with Kurt Cobain. The list goes on and on of artists who have stood at the intersection of politics and creation. And a lot of those artists even stood at the interface of almost inventing genres by speaking, their mind and speaking truth to power with music. I don't know why artists would choose to go the route. I mean, I do know why. It's capitalism, right? We know that some artists measure success in terms of money, instead of measuring it in terms of the way that they can touch hearts, how many hearts they reach, and how they can transform and help transform society. And so I think that we have to realize as artists oftentimes that we're being used by a system and fight against that with our art. That is the highest purpose of art, is to serve as resistance. And artists and art has always served on the front lines of resistance. You don't have social change without, music helping the people march and all of these things. But the way that art hits the heart, the way that it resonates in the self-conscious, so that we have mantras that we repeat to ourselves, these things should be feeding us, not distracting us.
Yeah. Well, on that note, the American rapper Macklemore has blown up with this track, Hind Hall. Let's take a listen.
Yeah. The people, they won't leave. What is threatening about divesting and want a piece? The problem isn't the protests, it's what they're protesting. It goes against what our country is funding. Block the barricade until Palestine is free. Block the barricade until Palestine is free.
Leila, Macklemore recently said at a rally, art in its purest form is resistance. Is that something that you relate to? And can you break that down for us?
Absolutely. I feel that art has been a part of every freedom movement that has ever existed throughout history. And this one is really no different. I mean, what we're seeing is truly hard to process as human beings with empathy. And if people aren't being empathetic, it's because they're really just disconnected from, the truth of our connectedness, if that makes sense. So yeah, when we think of art as resistance, we think of sharing truths that are often difficult for people to hear, and truths that are often taboo and maybe oftentimes shut down, which is what a lot of what we're seeing in pro-Palestine spaces and beyond, that our voices are being banned. So art is a really, really powerful tool because, you know, you can try to silence the people, but there will always be art that speaks to the movement. And that has happened throughout history forever.
Saul, when you mentioned Bob Marley, when he sang Get Up, Stand Up, the message was to provoke consciousness for action. Do we have any equivalent attempts to provoke consciousness today, and is it working?
I think we have several attempts. I mean, we can't make the mistake of ignoring all of the underground artists that are using their voices, all of the poets that are speaking up. I feel as if I'm a member of an army of poets. Actually, I've been so proud to be a part of that community of people that are speaking up and using their voice to connect to what's going on. But yes, it would be useful if artists contributed a song, a thought, to the movement in their own way with their own signature. We need that. Fela Kuti said, music is the weapon of the future. And we've been celebrating cowardice. Oftentimes in music, we've been celebrating complicity, we've been celebrating nonsense, and that's a reflection of ourselves and the propaganda that's fed to us through our culture. It's our responsibility to transform that and thus transform society and to celebrate artists that are helping us transform that. And so, yeah, it's happening, but more can happen.
Well, those who know Gaza will be aware that there is a form of sound warfare always underway there, whereby drones consistently blight the soundscape. They call it zanana. Here is Bisan to explain an example of how music is used to resist it.
I'm from Gaza. I'm still alive, and this video is just to make you hear the buzzing sound of zanana, or the unmanned plane that we are living under for years, but now it's more aggressive and even lower and louder in this genocide.
زني يا زنانة زني زني فقداني يقطعك لما تزني زي الدبانة وزني يا زنانة زني زني فقداني يقطعك لما تزني زي الدبانة.
Anis, as someone who understands the impact of sound, of vibrations, can you tell us about the psychological and physical effect, in fact, of this sort of constant background sound on the lives of Palestinians in Gaza?
I couldn't tell you. I couldn't imagine living through that. Us in America, in the West, we live with such privilege that music is only for us, sound is only for us. Pleasure, leisure, or, if we have the discipline, like Saul was talking about, to use it as revolution. But those in Palestine, those in Gaza who have to sort of navigate through these sinister efforts to hack their minds with threatening sounds, they live through something that I can't imagine. So no, I really couldn't speak to it. I'm always inspired by the way that Palestinians find a way to resist in everything that they do, especially those in Palestine who understand that at a way deeper level.
Well, so you want to come back there. I wanted to ask you as well about, hip-hop provided many listeners access to what some called the sort of black CNN. What have you personally learned listening to Palestinians, and what do you think we are all learning by listening to them?
Well, yeah, there's certainly a connection. First, I wanted to loop into your previous question. That Black CNN quote has to do with the description that was given in the early 90s, late 80s of Public Enemy. And it's true that Public Enemy incorporated the sounds of sirens and thus the sounds of police violence, the sounds of the hood into the music. And we recognize it as part of the music in the same way that in that recording that we hear, Palestinians have to create with the constant sounds of the drones there and surveillance, audible surveillance. What has been inspiring, and of course, there's a lot of correlation that has been made through the ages between, the struggles of all colonized people, and particularly, when I think of myself as a Black American and the role that Palestinians have played in both contemporary times. I think of the Ferguson movement with them saying this is how you can help yourself with tear gas, what have you, but all the way back, to people like Huey P. Newton and all the people who found inspiration, through and correlation between these struggles. We continually learn life from each other. As the Palestinians are prone to say, we teach life. Right, and that is what we see, more than the death, that obviously haunts our timelines. We honor their resistance, and that's the connection to be made. Right, is that resistance is resistance in many forms. Right, and all of it is valid, and all of it is necessary, especially when the powers that be are there applauding the actual terror that's being inflicted by the IOF, that's being inflicted by the U.S. establishment, that's being inflicted by all the forces against it that want to keep things as is. This is why. To hear those voices coming out, to hear those poems coming out, to see people continuing to dance, to realize that we are impossible to kill, that we are impossible to destroy, and to hear music and art that reflects that is crucial. It's a necessary part of the air we breathe. It's a necessary part of the water we drink. And I say that thinking of the people who are having difficulty finding water even, right? So music sometimes serves as sustenance in the same way that prayer and scripture can. And a lot of these things often are embedded in music and embedded in poetry, embedded in art, for that actual purpose, to sustain us, right? And so I'm sustained by what I see, and I hope to give some sustenance through what we share.
Well, Leila, you've just written a liberation album. I'd love to hear about the message that you are sending out in that liberation album. And if I may ask you also about this block party that we're seeing online, do we think blocking the celebrities who aren't speaking up is a good strategy? Is it the way forward?
Well, to start with that, yes. I think if you have a platform and you're not using it, then you're complicit. And I think that's really important to recognize, is that these people have huge amounts of money, and they have a community around them who's willing to listen to what they say because of who they are. And if you're not using that for good, then society really doesn't have to put you on a pedestal anymore. And I think it's really time that we start to kind of tackle this celebrity culture. And, the album it's a lot about capitalism and how it sort of feeds this whole entire thing. The album is about Palestine, of course, and the pro-Palestine movement. And, those of us who are the resistance, there's a song on it that's an original song called We Are the Resistance. And I think people hear the word resistance and they get a little like, oh, what does that mean, right? Because we've been sort of told that it's this negative, violent, scary thing. But no, every single person posting on social media, every single person who is taking to the streets relentlessly, because I think, especially I'm in New York City, and I think the NYPD is really getting tired of our protests, and we're seeing them really crack down and get violent. And because, what we're seeing, it's so frankly absurd. And it's truly hard for us to process the absurdity of what we're seeing, and also the propaganda around it, which is, it's sometimes we have a community of people basically who are looking at this and they're saying, are you seeing the same thing as me? Right? And we need an outlet for all of this rage that we feel, seeing these bloodied bodies every single day and wondering how people could be cheering this on. So anyone with a heart, with human empathy, is a part of the resistance. And we just have to keep going. I mean, that's what this whole movement is for.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to end today's program by handing the mic back to Rahaf for some final thoughts on the support she has seen for Palestine across the globe.
It gives me energy and hope and the feeling that my voice is heard and I'm not alone. Never, never, never stop talking, sharing about Palestine and about what's happening in Gaza, and pray for all the Palestinians and all the Gazans.
Thank you to our guests Saul, Anis and Leila. And thank you all for watching. Do you have a conversation or a topic that you'd like to see us take on? This is also your show. So let us know using the hashtag or the handle AJStream, and we will look into it. Stay awake, and I'll see you soon.